Greetings, this is Artie from Artifact Electronics, and welcome to episode number 100. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for your support. And if you're a first-time viewer, you have a lot of catching up to do. The best way to do this is to click on the Artifact Electronics sign below, and then click the Videos tab, and you'll be presented with a list of all 100 videos, or I should say all 99 videos you still need to watch. Now, to some of you, the title of this episode may seem like clickbait, but be patient and watch this, and once you've seen this, then make up your mind to see if the title actually matched the content of this video, or if you still thought that it was clickbait. This switching power supply comes out of a yet unnamed machine, which I will reveal. Be patient. To some of you it may look familiar. It's a standard Aztec power supply made in 1982, and this was used in quite a few machines, computers. Namely, the Radio Shack TRS-80 Model 3 and 4 used something very close to this. I think it was the same power supply, but the connectors may have been placed a little bit differently. And the symptoms of the machine driven by this power supply were that it acted differently every time I turned it on. And it did one of three things. First of all, you hit the power button and it came on and functioned just normally. Second, you would hit the power button and nothing would happen for about 3 or 4 or 5 seconds, and then the machine would spring to life. The last third of occurrences was you would hit the power button and nothing would happen. And if you listened closely, you could hear the characteristic clicking of a switching power supply trying to start up, but not being able to do so. So I had a pretty good idea, and I'm sure you do too, what was wrong with this. So I took the machine apart, took it out, and started to look around. The first thing I noticed, of course, that it had 3 reefer caps installed, and I think you're all familiar with these guys. They do tend to blow up and release magic smoke after not having been used for a while. So, first, without doing anything else, these 3 guys got removed and replaced here, here, and here. And then as I was looking, giving the power supply a visual inspection first, I smelled the pungent odor of cooked electrolyte. So that's definitely pointed at a capacitor. But instead of going and removing capacitors, I took this thing and I stuck my nose into it. And, well, the offending parts are replaced already, but you can still smell this. You can still kind of smell it a little bit because it's permeated the board and other components around it. Had enough? All right. So what I did was, sticking my nose in it, I localized the smell to coming at its strongest from these 2 caps, from the originals that were in there. And these are the 2 caps that were in there. And I do have them hermetically sealed in here because one of them smells really, really bad. So without further ado, I removed these guys, put in 2 replacements, and that seemed to fix the problem. I did measure these guys just to make sure, and you couldn't really measure them in circuit because they're in parallel. One of them was open, and the other one was had kind of crept up in value. So I was essentially measuring the second one, which was still kind of good, but it just looked wrong. But I had a gut feel that these things had leaked and were bad, and put new ones in. And there really wasn't that much evidence. Let's see if I can show you. There wasn't like a pool of electrolyte. This was a bad guy. There wasn't a pool of electrolyte or anything underneath it. Just a little bit of brown discoloration around the holes. Can't see that, but just take my word for it. So it wasn't like it had leaked a lot either on top or on the bottom. It was pretty clean, but the smell sure gave it away. So now all that remains is to put it back in and verify that this was actually the fix. And here it is. What is it? What is it? Well, all right, I won't leave you in suspense for too long. It's an Osborne Executive, also known as an Osborne 2, the successor to the Osborne 1, with much upgraded capabilities. It had a 7-inch screen instead of the 5-inch screen, 2 half-height drives, double density, same capacity as the double density drives on the original, 128K of memory. Processor was a 4 meg Z80. I think the one had a 2.5 meg Z80. And other than that, has a built-in fan in the handle, actually. And it came with the CP/M version 3.0 discs. It actually won't boot Osborne 1 discs. It'll read the COM files off them, but you have to boot this with a CP/M 3.0 disc. So let's put this guy back, put its clothes back on, and see if it works properly now. Oh, and this also had a composite video output directly on it right over here. On the Osborne 1, you could change this video plug over here and put another one in that actually won't come out. There was another one that had a composite output, that gave you a composite output on it, but that's unnecessary on this because it has one built in. All right, time to get dressed. All right, we're all dressed and ready to go to school. And here's what we look like. Looks pretty much like the one, except of course it has the 2 half-height drives stuffed into here. And what replaces the old drive cutout here is what looks like a speaker, but it's actually a cooling vent for the power supply, which is mounted back here. It does have an external power switch. And yeah, other than that, it's pretty identical. It does have the composite video out here. But when I tried it out, it did have a problem. And the problem was that 8 keys on the keyboard did not work. ASDF GHJK. This row of keys here, this partial row of keys here, but coincidentally it matched an electrical row in the circuit. Now we looked at this keyboard when I did the Osborne 1, so please refer to that if you have any questions, but the keyboard has no smarts in it. It's essentially just a matrix of switches. There's not even diodes in here. And the only downside is that it's got membrane contacts. On the Osborne 1, one of the keys, the escape key, was permanently closed. And I was going to give up on that keyboard, but then I kind of started separating the membranes from each other, and it started to work magically on the Osborne 1. Now on this one, before tearing the keyboard apart, because of the coincidence of these 8 keys matching up with a electrical row, I was figuring it may be, or hopefully be, a connection problem other than the membrane. So I looked at the keyboard connector here, which is just an angled header, and it was this, and I'm going to have a hell of a time showing this to you, but you can't see nothing. Maybe a little closer. Kind of. See all the pins sticking out here? That's where this keyboard connector plugged into. Well, after looking at it closely, I noticed that one of the pins here was missing. First I was wondering, is that maybe used as a key? But I checked the Osborne one, and no, it had all of the pins in there. And then when I checked the keyboard connector, I noticed that the broken off pin was actually stuck in the keyboard connector itself. So that came out easy, but now I was missing a pin in here, and there really was no easy way to just kind of solder on a new pin. So I had to rip it apart again and replace that connector. Problem was, I didn't have one of these angled connectors with the holding tabs on the edge. So what I did was I just put a plain 90-degree header in here. Looks just like this without the plastic shell and the 2 arms. And since this isn't going to travel a lot, and there's probably not going to be a lot of stress on this, that was the best solution. I could have spent weeks looking for one of these, but it really wasn't worth it. And as you may have guessed, it fixed the problem. It brought the missing electrical row of keys back to life. I didn't have to open the keyboard, and everything seemed to function. So now that we're all dressed up and ready to go to school, all we need is our lunch bag. So let's sample some of the things in the lunch bag. I made these discs the same way I made discs for the Osborne one, but I had to use different images because I think I mentioned that this one uses, they call it CPM Plus on this machine, but it's just CPM version 3.0 with the BIOS rewritten, I guess, or BIOS adapted to the hardware in this. So it won't boot the Osborne 1 discs, but it will read some of the executables, the COM files off the one. But I did get an almost complete set of the discs that came with this. Remember, it came with both the Osbornes came with a large selection of software. And essentially, one of their selling points was that if you buy this Osborne, you're paying for the software, but you're pretty much getting the computer for free, using the list prices of the included software to come up with that. And that in itself was true. So anyway, we got the disc in here, power supply's fixed, connector's fixed but not plugged in yet. And we will remedy that. Problem is that with the connector I put in, it was a lot easier to put it in because this thing kind of guided it in. And now that I don't have the plastic shell on that connector anymore, I need to guess and make sure that I don't damage it again. But I think I got it. There you go. So let's see. And we see the beautiful large 7-inch screen asking for a disc. And it doesn't work. How embarrassing is that? I bet you I plugged this in wrong. Give me a minute. Yeah, I had it plugged in wrong, and I knew this was going to bite me in the ass, but here's what I found out is because of the nature of this, This thing actually has 20 pins. But it turns out that the plug has 24 pins. But the way this is done is the extra 2 pins at each end are not used, and are used to make it fit into this connector nicely. So without the guideposts here, it's very easy to offset this thing horizontally. It doesn't do any damage, but it turned out that the return key did work, but except it was mapped to like the equals key on the keyboard or something. That gave me a hint. So yes, you have to be very careful on this particular machine when plugging this in. It's got to be exactly centered in this slot, and maybe I'll put some markings on here, and as long as you align the markings with each other, everything should be fine. So yet again, let's give it another try. And here we go. Yeah, it's identified as CPM Plus on the Osborne screen. But it's actually version 3. So we just booted into Microsoft Basic, and this is the interpreted version. So let's try out our standard test program. Oh man, I'm still used to the pet keyboard here. And there we go. So I put 2 pieces of tape, one on the plug and one on the case, so that you can align the edges of the tape when plugging this in. Not a really good solution, but it'll do for now. And then, of course, all of a sudden I realized I have 2 parts boards, 2 motherboards from the Osborne 1 when I bought the parts one, and neither of those work properly. The disk I/O doesn't work properly, so I should have just pulled one of the the shrouded connectors off of that and put it in here. Why didn't you guys remind me? Now I have to tear this thing apart again, take out the new connector I put in, and put a new one in, but that'll bring this back and make it perfect. And after all this Osborne stuff with the One and with the Executive, one thing I realized is we haven't seen any games run on this yet. So I searched the internet some more and basically found some CPM COM files that should run under any CPM, except of course they're not going to utilize graphics. They're going to be text-based, but we should run at least one game, right? So what better choice than Invaders? Oh, I need to why doesn't, oh, because I'm on drive A, so we go to B, and then we do Invaders. Okay, so wait, does this like start right off? Yes, it does. Just killed me. Canon won't stop. It keeps moving. really good sound effects and very responsive. But I guess this actually has graphics. This is not text-based. Well, yes it is. I don't know, maybe they're using special characters for this, so they rewrote the character set, but so that's that. Let's see if there's anything else on here that may possibly be interesting. What do we have? We have chess, TT, triple T invaders, Othello, word puzzle, bounce, aliens, Pac-Manos, run, craps. Well, alright, aliens. Wait a few seconds and type a CR. It's seeding the random number generator. What is this? This is also Space Invaders. Let's see. Left, right. Let's give it a try. Let's play We Come in Peace. Now this is entirely text-based. And it's just as much fun as the last one. Well, there you have it. So the last one actually was graphics-based, and this one is completely text-based. But so here we have a sample of games to run on the Osborne. So here's my pair of Osbornes, and since I've come this far, of course there is a third one. It's called it's the Osborne 4, called the Vixen. I don't know what happened to the Osborne 3. I see no references to it, and that one may have been true vaporware, but kind of cool. Not gonna lose any sleep over completing the collection, but it would still be cool to have all three of them. Now the funny thing on this one is the game displays properly over here, but because this has the virtual screen that scrolls depending on where on the screen your cursor is, it's cut off the bottom. You can't see your cannon here, and the aliens are dropping off the right side of the screen there. So I guess this game was written specifically for the Osborne 2, but yeah, there's probably sitting in there somewhere where I can do something or other. But even if there is, it still wouldn't all fit on the screen. So I guess I'll be playing that game over there. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I did not give the standard warning, such as when working inside a monitor, you know, doing an olfactory inspection did solve that problem over there. I backed it up with actually measuring the caps, but hey, that identified, my nose identified the problem in here and fixed it. If you have any allergies to burnt electrolyte or whatever, don't do this at home, because yeah, it does smell real nasty, and I would hate for you to have some ill effects from sticking your nose into a power supply. So I hope you like this. I hope it's worth a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe, Now, I need to add that I've gotten some comments from people that urge me to go back and do some test instruments, and I'd love to do that, but I'm kind of limited in what equipment presents itself to me for purchase, and I really don't have a choice. Sometimes I get a bunch of test instruments, and other times I get a bunch of computers or arcade games or pinball machines. I don't have any control over that, and I personally don't have a huge preference for either of them, but essentially the content of the videos is guided by what equipment I can find. We'll see you next time. Stay well and travel safely.